Welcome to the For Your Soul podcast, a podcast for your soul.
Welcome to the For Your Soul podcast, a podcast for your soul devoted to sound doctrine and biblical truth. I am your host, Milton Catania, and thank you for joining me on today's episode. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a list of the top 10 countries where it is most difficult to be a Christian because of persecution. As we know, persecution against Christians is inevitable. We know that as long as that we are in this world, we will be persecuted for our faith because we live in a world that is hostile to God. And I'm going to be sharing this list with you today so that we may have awareness of what's going on in the world, and plus that we may pray for our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ who are at risk of persecution daily, which includes imprisonment, violence, and even death. Now, this list has been compiled by a watchdog group called Open Doors USA, and if you have not heard of them, I encourage you to check them out at their website. And they monitor the persecution that takes place amongst Christians worldwide. And according to some statistics that they posted, in the last year, 2021, there have been over 300 million Christians living in places where they experience high levels of persecution and discrimination. 5,898 Christians killed for their faith, 5,110 churches and other Christian buildings attacked, 6,175 believers detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, or imprisoned, and 3,829 Christians abducted. So these are some statistics that have taken place within the last year amongst Christians who are persecuted, and as you can see, it's a lot of Christians who are affected. In addition to that, they publish an annual report, which is called their World Watch List, and in this list, they reveal the top 50 countries where Christian persecution is most rampant. Now, I'm going to be sharing from that list, but I'm going to be sharing the top 10 simply for the sake of time. That being said, let's begin. So what I'm going to do is that rather than start from number 1, I'm going to count down from number 10. Okay, so we're going to start from the 10th country on the list, and we're going to go down all the way to number 1. All right, so let's begin with number 10, and that is India. So India population is the second most populous country in the world, with a population of 1,397,423,000 people, which is right next to China. And I don't have China's population on here. And China is actually on the list, but it's not even in top 10. It's actually number 17. But anyway, so I digress. So with India, second most populous country in the world. And in regards to their Christian population, they actually have a pretty high amount. And that amounts to 68,863,000. Okay, that's the population of Christians in India. Out of the billion that's in India, that's the Christian population that's here. And the main religion is Hinduism. Now, when it comes to this list overall, in the top 10 are basically the number of countries where there is extreme persecution. Okay, so this is the worst kind of persecution these people will face, and India is one of them. So these top 10 countries are known for their extreme levels of persecution. And when it comes to India, the way they persecute Indian Christians, it's because of their religion, because of Hinduism. Because Hinduism is the main religion in India. And not only that, because Hinduism is India's most prominent religion, it has led to what is known as Hindutva, which is spelled Hindu, Hindutva, Hindutva. I guess that's a much easier way to say it. Hindutva. Hindutva, which is an ideology that denounces Christians and other religious minorities as true Indians, meaning as true Indian citizens, because they have allegiances outside of India. So if you're somebody in India who is a Christian, then you're not seen as someone from India. If anything, you're seen as a foreigner, a stranger. And as a result, those adhering to Hindutva believe that those who are not Hindus should be purged out of the country. And how to do that? Through persecution. And when it comes to Indian Christians, they are persecuted through mob violence. And this mob violence isn't spontaneous. It is actually well orchestrated. It is well planned. And sometimes they'll come to a person's church, or they'll go to a person's house, or there's a Christian gathering, and they'll raid the place. They'll burn the place. They'll throw stones. And yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. If you're not seen any articles regarding Christian persecution in India, I encourage you to check them out, as well as videos, because it's pretty bad in India for Christians. And not only that, they also spread disinformation about Christians on social media. And throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, things actually got worse in India, because now Christians are being, not only are they being overlooked, right, in terms of receiving aid, emergency relief, but they are even accused of spreading the virus. So basically, this pandemic has been a reason for the Hindu extremists to persecute Christians even more. And in light of what I just shared about India, as you can see, that's why it's number 10 on our list. Moving on to number 9, we have Iran, which is in the Middle East, and the total population of Iran is 84,308,000, and a Christian population of 800,000. And the main religion in Iran is India, and anyone converting from Islam to Christianity is at most risk of persecution from the government, and as well as their families. And persecution can include the raiding of houses, as well as the imprisonment of Christian leaders. And according to Open Doors, the Iranian government, they see the growth of the church as an attempt by the Western countries to undermine Islam and the Islamic regime of Iran. And going back to Christian leaders who are arrested, what happens is not only are they arrested, the houses get raided, the members are also taken away. And overall they're prosecuted, and they are given long sentences for, quote, crimes against national security, end quote. And that's the situation out in Iran, which is number 9. Now, number 8, we have Pakistan. Pakistan has a population of 212,107,000 and a Christian population of 4,080,000. And like Iran, the main religion is Islam, and the same situation applies here. Christians are ousted by the government, their families. They are viewed as second-class citizens. They can be arrested for disobeying the government, and the pandemic has also led to an increase of aid provided to Christians only if they convert to Islam. That's the only way they can really get aid. So there are also blasphemous laws that includes non-Muslims, such as Christians and other sects of minority Muslims, of insulting the Prophet Muhammad or the Quran. And not only that, even a false accusation can lead to mob violence. Other forms of persecution in Pakistan include silent kidnappings, forced marriages, and forced conversion of Christian girls and women. Number 7, we have Nigeria. So now we're going over to Africa with Nigeria, and Nigeria has a population of 211,447,000, Christian population of 98,006,000. The main religion is actually Christianity, which is pretty crazy because Nigeria, it's on the top 10 list of current countries in the world where persecution is most rampant. Yeah, Christianity is like one of the top religions there, of course, next to Islam. And of course, in particular, North Nigeria, Christian persecution in North Nigeria is pretty bad. It's pretty brutal. It's pretty violent. For instance, they have to put up with extremist groups, such as the Boko Haram, the Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP for short, Fulani militants and criminals who kidnap and murder with very little consequence. And when it comes to Boko Haram and ISWAP, they want to purge Christians out of the country. And of course, under the Sharia law, Christians are treated and discriminated as second-class citizens. And and in addition to persecution from the extremists, they also face rejection from their families because they're Christian, as well as pressure from their families to recant their faith. Okay, that's Nigeria, number 7. Number 6 is another African country, which I'd never heard of before. It's called Eritrea. It's like in the northeastern part of Africa. And Eritrea has a population of 5,555,000, with a Christian population of 2,611,000. Main religion there is Islam. And even though half the population identifies as Christians, believers in Eritrea, they suffer extreme persecution, and it is actually one of the hardest places in the world to follow Christ, despite the high amount of Christians in that country. The government in Eritrea recognizes only 3 religions: Orthodox, Catholic, and Lutheran. And so what that means is that any denominations that are not recognized, any denominations outside of those 3 are at risk of severe persecution at the hands of the state. And Christian gatherings are raided and believers are arrested. So following their arrest, they usually face long prison sentence and solitary confinement. And those who are released are subject to military service or house arrest. So even if you get released from jail or prison, you still have to be subject to military service or house arrest. So there's no real freedom in Eritrea when it comes to Christians. And not only that, there are Christians not recognized by the state are at risk of surveillance. So meaning like they'll be monitored, their calls will be monitored, their bandwidth for the internet, it's kept slow, and they'll also have a network of people that are assigned with spying on their Christian neighbors. So in light of all this, the high amount of monitoring and the persecution in Eritrea, it has been infamously given the title of Africa's North Korea. And North Korea, which is on the list, is also one of the worst countries in the world to be a Christian. And we're going to get to North Korea in a bit. So, yeah, that was number 6, Eritrea. And now, number 5, we're going back to Middle East with Yemen. Yemen has a population of 30,911,000. Christian population, a few thousand. And main religion here is Islam. And like the previous ones, the previous Islamic countries, Christians who convert from Islam, they face persecution from the government. They pressure from the families to recant. And of course, they have to deal with, and in Yemen, Christianity is forbidden by law, and in regard because it's Islam and Yemeni law, and as a result, any Christian that is caught by authorities is taken into custody. They're interrogated as well as death. And not only that, Yemeni culture is actually extremely tribal, and often tribal punishment for denouncing Islam can be death or banishment. Furthermore, married couples, let's say one of them decides to be a Christian, it could actually result in divorce, and that person who becomes a Christian may also lose custody of their kids. And also, they face risk of not having enough supplies during an emergency because emergency relief is offered at mosques and by local Muslim leaders. Overall, in Yemen, it is considered discriminatory if anyone who is not a Muslim. Number 4, Libya. Libya has a total population of 6,746,000, and the population of Christians is about 34,600. And the main religion in Libya is Islam. So Libya, which is in Africa, There is pressure to recant on those who leave Islam for Christianity. They are ousted by the communities, their families, and as a result, they could end up homeless, jobless, and alone. If you witness to others, for example, in sharing the gospel, it will likely be reported, which will lead to arrest and violent punishment. One thing about Libya is that it has a lack of central government, which means that there is no laws that are enforced uniformly, meaning that Christians will face overt and public persecution, meaning that anything goes. There won't be no restraints. And additionally, they face large target kidnapping as well as persecution. And therefore, in Libya, Christians have to live in secret in order to avoid persecution. Number 3, we're still in Africa. We have Somalia, which has a population of a total population of 6,589,000, and only a couple of hundred Christians. And they in Somalia, they have to deal with the extremist group Al-Shabaab, which they control much of the territory in Somalia. And Christians are viewed as high-value targets by Al-Shabaab. And not only that, they have to deal with extreme pressure from their families and community. And even the suspicion of someone converting to Christianity can result in punishment, intimidation, and death. And Somalia is also one of the few countries in the world that has banned Christmas, right? So it's pretty bad. Now, moving on to number 2, we have North Korea. North Korea has a total population of 25,941,000 and a Christian population of 400,000. The main religion there is agnosticism. Now, when it comes to North Korea has actually been number 1 on the World Watch list for almost 20 years before it got beat out by the next country, which I will share as for on number 1. And North Korea is led by Kim Jong-un, who leads the country in a single party dictatorship. And Christians in North Korea face possibly one of the worst types of punishments in the world. They are at immediate risk of imprisonment, brutal torture, and death. And it is estimated that about 50,000 to 70,000 Christians in North Korea are in prison camps. And the family of those captors can pretty much share the same fate. And under the Kim family, the government views Christians as the most dangerous political class of people. Yeah, so when it comes to Christianity in North Korea, these Christians have to live their faith out in secret. Otherwise, they will be severely persecuted. Now, finally, number 1, we have Afghanistan. Okay, number 1, we have Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a total population of Afghanistan has a total population of 38,914,000 and a couple of thousand Christians, and the main religion is Islam. Now, I'm sure those listening may be aware as to why Afghanistan became number 1 on this year's World Watch list, and it's because the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan in the past year. After President Biden, he withdrew all military troops, in which I believe 13 servicemen were killed, and it is believed that there are still hundreds, if not thousands, of people still left in Afghanistan that were stranded because of the president. And not only that, the Taliban took over. Well, I'm sorry, if anything, they regained control over the country, because the last time the Taliban were in control of the country was in 2001, which was the year of 9/11, and in that same year after 9/11, they were driven out of the country by the U.S. Army. And now they have control over the country again, and the Taliban, like any extremist Islamic group, they believe that leaving Islam for Christianity is shameful, and it results in death. Christians, have to either hold their meetings in secret, otherwise they would have to flee the country, because if they are found out by the Taliban, then they're pretty much dead. And while the situation in Afghanistan before the Taliban retook the country was pretty bad, it's much worse. It's much worse now. And not only that, families of those converting to Christianity, they either disown or even kill believers in order to maintain their honor as a family. It is viewed as a form of justice, and Christians also who convert from Islam may also be taken to a psychiatric hospital because they are seen as crazy. They can't see anything beyond their own religion as true. So, not only that, the Taliban also recruits people to identify Christians, where they live, who they're with, etc. And they are often in order that they are later on pursued and taken away. All right, so if you want to look at the rest of the World Watch List, I encourage you to do so. Go to opendorsusa.org, and there they have the list, and they have all the details and more. I just shared with you a little bit of the list, and basically just an overview of what takes place in these countries, especially the top 10 countries. And again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I wanted to share this because I believe that we have to be aware of persecution taking place across the world. And at the end of the day, no one is immune from persecution. I know it's easy for people in the West, in America, to think, oh, that cannot never happen to me. I live fine. But it can happen. It can definitely happen at some point. I mean, Christians are, even if we're not persecuted, people are still insulted for the faith each day. Whether it's on social media, they're mocked online. So there is always going to be some form of persecution. But I think at the same time, Christians, especially in other countries, we take it for granted because there are people who are believers in other countries who can pretty much die for their faith. And to quote the Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy 3:12, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. And that's just reality. I know that it's so easy to live by. It's so easy to just think Christianity is all about blessing and being prosperous, especially with the way it's portrayed nowadays, with the prosperity gospel and all these self-centered type of messages. But if you truly want to live for Christ, guess what? There is going to be persecution at some point. Of course, this doesn't mean you'll die, but you will be hated for your faith. You'll be despised. People will leave you. Friends will leave you. But that's the cost for following Christ. And again, I just wanted to bring that to mind to make us aware, and also to make us humble, and also to make us also help us wait on the Lord, that we may trust Him, that He may protect us, that He may guide us, and that He may use us, that regardless of what takes place in the world, regardless of what persecution Christians face, that we may continue to stay faithful to Him and preach the gospel, because at the end of the day, the gospel must continue to spread, and it will continue to spread regardless of persecution, because God is in control no matter what, and that should be our comfort, no matter what persecution comes our way. Thank you for listening to the For Your Soul podcast. For more information, you can follow me on my social media as well as my YouTube channel, where I upload every clip and episode of the podcast. And if you would like to contribute, you could do so at anchor.fm/foryoursoul/support. And please give a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts, such as Apple and Spotify. That really helps me out. Once again, this is the For Your Soul podcast, a podcast for your soul.